Hey guys, how's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing good. I have this trigger whenever I'm going live. I do it anyways when I'm sitting around. Let me get to the point. I just wanted to say a couple things about what happened today at the Capitol in the United States, because I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm not sure what to make of it. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I know that right there, that might trigger some people to say, that fucking guy supports Trump, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Listen, let me just get that out of the way first, okay? Because I have tried to have this conversation with a lot of people ever since Trump was elected. And I think I understand now why I was trying to have that conversation. Because when I first kind of recognized what Trump was doing and what Trump was saying, he was about empowering little people. He was about taking the power away from corporations and groups that seek to basically gather power for themselves and give it back to the little people. And that's the messaging that he used over and over and over again. And I just happened to be a point in my life where I was recognizing those same things. Now, I came out of the left 100%, like definitely 100%. I, like most people growing up, was not fully in control of my emotions and not now. So I don't even wish to make that kind of claim. I mean, I would never make such a claim. And the only thing that I do claim to know, if you've ever listened to me rant before, is that the only thing I know is that I don't know anything at all, for sure. That's the only thing I know. Right? I'm just trying to make sense of this world just like everybody else is. And that's what I wanted to talk about, making sense of the world and making sense of the world that we saw today. You have to look at it through what I think is the most defining point of our particular time, which is emotion. Okay? If you look at it through the appeal of emotion, if you look at everything that's happening today, and the appeal to emotion as opposed to the appeal to common sense, as opposed to the appeal of saying, hey, what are the facts? Let's look at this calmly. Let's just try to discern where the truth is. Nobody's doing that right now. Nobody's doing that right now. We are all in a state of highly charged emotion. And when you're in a highly charged emotional state, it's very difficult to make sense of things that you see happening in the world because you want to get to that point quicker. You want to have the answer quicker so that you can not have to worry about this highly emotionally charged thing, so that you can go back to the life that you wanted to be engaged in, which was your own life and engaging your own problems and your own things, your own situations and priorities and family and vacation planning and budget planning and all the things that people have to do in our lives. And so when something that is highly charged emotionally comes along, you don't really want to have to think about it. What you want to do is you want to defer to experts. And that's not exactly an accident these days, is it? I mean, we have all been hooked into these social media websites where it's like these quick kind of one-offs, and we've really kind of gotten into these battleground kind of ways of thinking about things. Black and white, they call it Manichaean thinking, black and white. Good versus evil. And we all want to believe that we're good, right? We all want to believe we're good people. I want to believe I'm a good person. I want to believe that my actions are always motivated by what I think is the best course of action, and not just for me, but for everyone. I want to believe that the things that I want are for the best interests of everyone, because I feel like if we're all having a better experience in life, how can that be bad? And so the question then becomes, well, how do you get that better experience in life? And that's where I come back to Donald Trump and what Donald Trump was saying. And Donald Trump was saying not that he was going to fix everything for everybody, which is what it was sold as, like he's a demagogue and he's going to, empower the white nationalists or whatever. But what do they mean by white nationalists? The people that basically tried to destroy Donald Trump. They mean people who find it in their own interests to determine the outcomes of their money and their efforts and all the things that they did in their lives, all the things that they built up, their savings, their plans, their children, their family, their possessions, everything. A white nationalist is basically a person that wants to be able to control aspects of their own lives and say, hey, in this country, in Canada, for instance, we pay exorbitant taxes. And we pay those taxes to go to things that we think are to make our lives better, right? Like for infrastructure and for healthcare and for education and for basically pensions and all the things that we think that are in our best interests, right? We think about how our money is being spent. And that's why we're so concerned with what the government is doing with our money. We want to make sure that the government is doing something that's good with our money. And so you have people on the right side of the spectrum that say, I want to, well, if anything, ideally, I want to pay less taxes. And I want the money that I do give the government to be spent responsibly, to go to things preferably for my own country. Because it's my money. I worked for it, right? And so I suppose you could say that's a selfish thing, but it's not really selfish, is it? I mean, we all want to be respected. We all want to have our finances handled in a responsible way, and we all do that in our own homes, in our own lives. We all do the kind of things that we make sacrifices, right? That's what life is. That's what budgeting is. You make a choice between one or two things that you can do. You can either save your money or you can drink some more beer tonight. And believe me, I failed at that one so many times. It's one of my greatest faults. But it's about emotionally satisfying our souls. And so what does alcohol do for me? I can tell you. I get stressed out. At night, I'm worried about where things are going. I have been definitely worried because the media tries to tell us what's going on in the world, and they try to tell us all these doom and gloom kind of stories, and they tell us that climate change is about to set the planet on fire, and there's too many people, and my goodness, what are we going to do? We're just out of control. We're out of control. That's the messaging. We're out of control. And why is that the messaging? Because they know if they can appeal to you emotionally, they can get your attention, right? They know that if they can appeal to you in such a way that it actually grabs your attention, and you start thinking, oh, geez, well, I should worry about that because my life might be in jeopardy, my family and my things and my possessions, all the things that I care about might actually be in jeopardy if I don't listen to what these people are saying to me about the climate, if we don't do something about our habits and our lifestyles and all the things that we're told that are contributing to climate change. And so it's very easy to set up that kind of Manichaean worldview, black and white. There's a good way to live and there's a bad way to live. And obviously the good way to live, when you already have enough things on your plate that you don't really want to have to be bothered with thinking about that kind of stuff, is to defer to the experts, right? That's what they do. That's what we pay them to do. That's what their job is. Their job is to go out there and figure out things about the earth and the planet and the climate and the ocean oscillations and all that good stuff. It's their job. We pay them so that we don't have to think about it, so that we can have some kind of sense in our mind that someone is taking care of a problem that we simply don't have time to think about. And so we pay these experts. And, you can't blame them for getting a little hyperbolic. It's sort of like what they do. The IPCC is made up of a bunch of people whose job it is to basically bring information together and package it for you in a way that you can understand all the things that are happening in the earth, all the potential dangers. We're looking at the dangers, okay? We're looking at the future ahead. And we're looking at the dangers that are coming our way. And we're saying, hey, if we don't do this, then that might happen. And that makes perfect sense. That is what science is. You come up with a hypothesis, and then you're supposed to test that hypothesis to see if you're actually getting it right. And one thing I noticed when I started to listen to all kinds of debates and things like that was that the people on the climate change is catastrophic and it's anthropomorphic climate change. And if we don't do something about people, we're all doomed. The people that were selling that side of the argument, we're doing it very poorly. And maybe they're even right? What's the argument that you always hear? You always hear, hey, what's the worst that can happen? Like, maybe we don't save the planet. I'm not sure that I'm making sense there. What's the worst that can happen? We don't do this little thing that's not really going to hurt you that much, and we end up saving the planet by accident. That's the way that they sell it, right? And, that appeals to a lot of people. It's like, oh, what's just this little thing? It's just like a little something. And as long as I agree to this set of terms and conditions, I suppose it's okay. Let's just put it on a little climate tax. What could be the harm? It's something that I can afford. But what about the people that can't afford it? What about the people that are already struggling? What about the people that are on the edge, that are barely making things meet, that are just barely making the bills? They're not saving money. They're not putting money away for their child's college education fund. And, they're a little more emotionally concerned about what happens with their money. And that tends to be people with families and kids. And those tend to be the people that get on the conservative side of the argument. Why? Because they're concerned with the money that they already have to give over, where it's going and what's being done with it. This should make perfect sense, I think. Let me know. I see Shauner's there. Kris is there. What's up, dudes? How you guys doing? Crazy day, huh? Oh, before I forgot, because I do have a tendency to wonder. I wanted to come in here to say that was wild what happened today, but can we just say I'm so sorry for that poor woman who was shot and died, bled out there in the Capitol. That was awful. That was awful, and it's a shame that it had to come to that. But why did it have to come to that? Because people that are being told that they're nationalists, okay, because they're already struggling, they're already in the edge. They're already at that point where their money is not being used in a way that they think is fiscally responsible, and they should feel that way, by the way, if you pay attention to what the government does with the money, which is why people on the left say, hey, all this money's being spent on wars and just army stuff and killing people. And you know what? That's all true. That's all true. I hate that kind of stuff too. That's why I first identify with the left much more than the right, because they said, well, the right is all war. But that's not accurate. It's not accurate. It is accurate to say that there is a lot of money made from the war industry in the United States. But you know who makes the most money? Pharma. It's a different story I'm not going to go into today. I just wanted to say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for that poor lady. But I also wanted to say that, hey, right now, we're letting our emotions control us. And that's, that goes for the masking thing too, because people that put on the mask, I feel like there's an automatic kind of discomfort that comes with having to put on a mask. Nobody wants to have to put on a mask. Very few people want to have to put on a mask. And so the people that do feel like they're doing it for the right reasons. Why? Because they get emotionally manipulated into believing that the mask is going to save lives, right? Social distance, contact tracing, put on the mask, save lives. That's what we're being told over and over and over again. Why? Because the people in public health, they also know that it's good to emotionally manipulate people to get them to do what you want. This is a no-brainer. They're emotionally manipulating people. But just for the record, up until 2019, there were no empirical studies. The good one, randomized control studies, or if somebody knows what it is, let me know. Randomized control trials. There were none up until this year that showed that masks actually were significant in cutting down disease transmission from one person to another outside of a hospital setting. And even then, it was questionable. But anytime it was taking place outside of a hospital setting, unless it was like one of those N95s that was actually fitted and you were taught how to put it on and take it off, and so that you wash your hands every single time you take it off, and you wash your hands before you put it on, because disease germs they get from one place to another, it's the fingers and then touching the face, and that's what really makes stuff spread. When somehow you touch something and it gets to your mouth, that's what makes things spread. What makes things spread. whether, you touch something, you put on the mask, you take off the mask, there's germs on your mask, you pick up a piece of food because you're, in a hurry and you eat the food, then the germs get into your system. Look, it's a whole thing, but the point is that we're being told that the masks help. And so we're being emotionally manipulated into wearing something. Now, the people like me that are saying, hey, the science isn't backing it up. There is no hardcore science to back it up. So we're saying, look, I 100% understand that I am easily and emotionally manipulated too, right? And I can be an emotional person, although I think there's a difference between passion and emotion. Emotion is something that kind of guides your ego, and passion is something that kind of guides your resolve, if that makes sense. And so people like me that say, hey, up until 2019, none of this made any sense, and all this emotionally social distancing and emotional manipulation and all this stuff is connected to these other reasons that I see as a threat to me and to my family and to my way of life. And I don't like it. And so I reject the mask. I reject it emotionally the same way that people want me to wear it emotionally. And so that's why you see these people, they're losing their minds over a mask, right? And we're losing our minds over the way that an establishment is trying to control us. Yes, 100%. Can I just read the comment from my friend Saul? The politics of those who are struggling to survive are not the same as those who have the luxury to engage in fantasies. For example, a 20-year-old white person whose priority is bringing down, quote, white supremacy has to be well off enough to prioritize something so abstract. Yes. The same can be said about those with the luxury of working at home being so passionate about masks. Yeah, because they're not being subjected to it when they go out as often as somebody who might have to wear it at their day job might have to wear a mask. And by the way, those people that have to wear it at their day job, they are also super frustrated about the fact that they have to wear a mask at their day job, I assume, because it's just like, you put it on a mask, it's not comfortable. Nobody would do it willingly for no particular reason. Except maybe like in Japan, where apparently they do it for fun. I don't really know. But yeah, so people are highly charged about the mask. And I latched onto the mask thing early. But again, it's about manipulating your emotions to have you follow a plan. Now, I try not to talk about the masks too much because it is this emotionally charged issue. And people, when they're emotionally charged about something, they can't reason. You know this. When you're scared, you find it hard, or when you're scared or you're aggravated, you're having a fight with your wife or your spouse or your husband or whatever, you just can't think straight. You get wild. You can't stick to a reasonable way to actually have a discussion because you're too emotionally charged. Okay? So our emotions are not our friends. I have a great t-shirt that says your ego is not your amigo. And I've always liked that, because your emotion is strongly tied to your ego. And so people are basically manipulating our egos, and our egos are the things that keep us from breaking down, right? From breaking down emotionally. They're the things that keep us moving forward and able to actually deal with the day-to-day struggles and difficulties that we have to deal with. When we lose a parent or one of our family members gets sick, or we get sick, or we're struggling with the idea of paying bills. And so what do we do? For emotional support, sometimes we turn to alcohol. And alcohol, why? Because it actually unbridles your emotions. But I would say that people want to have their emotions be let out. That a lot of the time that we're taught to coop up our emotions. Like my kids, one of the things that you notice as a parent is that your kids are really emotional little balls of energy, right? They're so emotional. You have to teach them not to cry like all the time about every little thing. They scrape their knee, they want to cry. Somebody takes a toy that they wanted to play with, they want to cry. You tell them they can't watch a show right now, they want to cry. You got to tell them it's time for dinner and it's something they don't want to eat, they want to cry. They want to get emotionally crazy about it, right? And so we spend our entire time as parents teaching our kids how to manage our emotions. And that's why when our parents, excuse me, not when our parents, when we look to someone that we want to put our faith in, that we want to put our trust in, we look to somebody that is emotionally stable. You don't want somebody that's flying off the wall and going all crazy about every little thing, because if they are, you feel like that person maybe isn't able to control their emotions, and maybe they're not trustworthy enough for your support. Or maybe they're not somebody that you should listen to, because they're just so out of control that anybody that's out of that out of control, how could they possibly be somebody that you would want to listen to? They obviously don't have their shit together. Does that make sense to people? Let me know. And so emotions ran high today in the Capitol. And people, they went there and they feel like they have had things stolen from them. They feel like they have had an election stolen from them. And you know what? I'm going to be perfectly honest here when I say that I think that they have had at least some fuckery happen in that election. Okay, let's try this. So I do that? Do I have to do something here?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, brother.
Good.
How you doing, man?
I know.
How's
I know.
life?
It's a quarantine life.
It's a quarantine life. Yeah, well, welcome. Am I rambling too much? I'm trying to make some sense of a kind of an emotional time, and I'm trying to understand why people are just so charged up right now.
I think there's a few things that play into it. I think I don't think this situation had died down and now it's coming back up again. I think this has been something that is unfortunately been going on in the U.S. for a long time. I think when you put someone like Donald Trump in the mix and you stir shit up, this is, I think, the end result, unfortunately.
Well, what do you think? Okay, let me just push back on that a little bit. What do you think about the fact that Donald Trump, since he was elected, has been vehemently opposed by the vast majority of media? Like, everything that he says and does, they absolutely attack. Like, there's some kind of ridiculous, they've done studies on it, something like 95% of the coverage of Donald Trump is just negative. And so they attack every little thing that he does.
It's amazing because I have friends in the States, and and it's not a kind of I see side A, I see side B. It's literally you're either completely side A or completely side B. There's no in between.
So it's emotional.
I've got one friend from.
People are emotionally attached to it. They're attached to
They
it.
are.
They actually feel like it's this deep-seated thing that's attached to their ego. And your ego is this thing that tells you whether you're a virtuous person or not. And everybody wants to be a virtuous person. Everybody wants to be the kind of person that appeals to other people. And I mean, I don't think that most people walk around thinking, how can I be a dick to someone else today? Most people generally want to be accepted. It's in our nature. We want to be accepted. It helps us at work. It helps us at home. It helps us with our friends and our relationships. Yep. It makes perfect sense to want to be accepted. So when they attack someone like Donald Trump day in and day out, it makes perfect sense that people would either choose that they're attacking Donald Trump the man, and so they put the support behind Donald Trump the man, or Donald Trump the man is someone who painted or represents this thing like racism or sexism or whatever. And so people say, well, I'm definitely not for that. And so they say, no, I don't want to be associated with that kind of thinking or that kind of feeling. Because, pardon me?
And touching upon that, with the United States, there's no fine line. It's either you're right to the left or right to the right. And I've got friends, like I said, I've got this one guy in Colorado who I know, and he is so pro Donald Trump. It doesn't matter what you say to him. It doesn't matter that you tell him, hey, just so you know, the president is a narcissistic egomaniac, and this is really what he is, and this is what the rest of the world sees looking from the outside in. But the states is the Americans are, I consider, one country where they're so patriotic. I mean, and God bless them. I mean, I do feel that there is.
Can I just say
Yeah.
right from the outset, and that a lot of the foundations of the United States has obviously been tainted with slavery and all those kind of things that people want to put into it when they talk about it now, especially kids coming out of college, because they're literally being taught to think about things through this emotional lens, right? You attach that to it, and it also paints the way that the media talks about him. It paints the way that everybody thinks about him, and people don't want to think about it if they can help it. They want the easy answer. They want to say, somebody says he's a racist. I heard this thing that he said one time that sounded racist to me. He's definitely a racist. End of story. If you don't agree with me, there's something wrong with you. But nobody wants to spend the time thinking about the counterpoint. What if he's not a racist? What if he's the kind of guy that actually was one of the first ones to open up his golf clubs in a place where it was traditionally not open to people of darker skin, and he let people into his golf clubs? What if he's the kind of person that was actually on Oprah back in the day, and he's gotten awards from the NAACP, and he's gotten all these kind of things and accolades, and he used to be in like all kinds of rap songs, and he used to be very highly respected by that community, and all of a sudden he runs for president, and now everybody's calling him a racist, and it's based on a couple of spurious examples, and it just doesn't really fit the profile, unless of course you want to think about it in a very short-sighted sort of way. Does that make sense, or does that
to
not?
Me, what makes me see the real truth here is, you know what, who am I to say that the election was stolen from him? It wasn't stolen from him. I'd like to believe that, the election ended up being fair, the votes were fair, everything was fair. Am I surprised people are saying it's not? No, because, again, trying to look from the outside in, I almost feel like Donald Trump fans are now a cult in some respect. I almost feel like,
For that, yeah. And certainly there's an aspect of that. Certainly there's an aspect of the kind of culty behavior.
To me, that's sure. What's disturbing, because when you with respect to these riots and that, and unfortunately the death of the woman, what I saw and what I heard was a cult leader telling his followers to upheaval, to do something about it, and not just stand there. Right. And I think another part of it is, we all know how strong Americans are. We all know how strong the American mind is. And if it's one country that when you start to, tell your people to do this or do that, because they're so patriotic, I feel that they take just one step further. I look at any other country, and I look at even, say, Canada, for instance, and I can't think of a time where you have a prime minister telling their followers to do something that involves such violence, and I'm seeing a pattern here.
Okay, so can I push back on that a little bit? Can I push back on that a little bit? Because at no point did I ever hear him call for violence.
No, but
at no point. At no point. But see, there's this thing that happens, right? When you tell people that they're wrong and they're bad, and even if they support him, that must mean they're racist because he's a racist. And these are just regular people that are they're having a hard life. And this guy's actually trying to change tax codes that basically give more money to the super rich to play with and have their little pet projects, and people in government that don't seem to care about them at all. They haven't cared about them all for years. And this guy comes along and says that your life matters, you are important. And then he doesn't fit the profile. All the stuff that same elite is saying about him and telling you about him, that he's this violent guy and that he just wants violence. And in your heart, that's not you. That's not what you want. And why would people insult you so much, and belittle you so much, and not even take your feelings into the fold when they make their considerations, when they actually make their evaluations of what's important and what is not? They don't care about the people that they supposedly serve, and they're always talking about equality and this and that, and in the meantime they're not actually trying to provide it for their own people, like, at all. So it comes off as very tone deaf. And then you have at the end of an election cycle, and look, You might think it's fair. You might not think it's fair. I posted a video. It was from the Epoch Times, which people will go, oh, it's right-wing, whatever. You know, look, if you just go and actually watch the video, it's like an hour and a half long documentary just about all the stuff that took place over the election, all the wild connections to the CCP that people should actually be worried about. Because for 4 years, they were told that Donald Trump was a Russian puppet. They were told that he was being controlled by the Kremlin. They said, we're going to find this evidence. They were convinced to let this charade go on for months and months and months, where they tried to find something to incriminate Donald Trump with. Nothing was ever even remotely fitting that description. And then the CCP comes along, basically like the amount of fuckery that went around with the CCP and this, like, you got to go look at the connections. It's kind of mind blowing. And believe me, the people that support Donald Trump, they might not have seen that documentary, but they're at least open to the idea that somebody might be manipulating things away from their candidate, who they think that has done a good job for them, has told them that he cares about them. And I think he does. I actually genuinely think he cares about regular people. And he's done all kinds of good things. He's done good things for the Hispanic community, the Black community, the white community. He's basically doing things for people that want to do things for themselves. Okay, so these are people that want to have the ability to engage in business and maybe pay less taxes, and maybe he's getting investments to communities to help them build up their own priorities, right? But the Democratic Party is always talking about how they want to fix things for people, and we're just going to give you more of this, we're going to give you more of that. And meanwhile, these people that are voting for Trump, they're the one that pay the majority of the taxes. They're the middle class, right? The money comes from them. They always hear about the rich doesn't pay their fair share, and then there's people on the dole that they also have a little bit of disdain for, because they're obviously not working as hard as them. And they see that the only people that the DNC seems to care for is now the super elite rich, celebrities, and the very poor. So they're being completely left out of the mix. Obviously, they're going to turn to Donald Trump, and he's not all the things that they're saying he is. He's obviously not. He's obviously not a moron. He's obviously not a racist.
And I'm sure there's backstories to things that he has done, well, and things that maybe a lot of the people don't know. What?
But that was my point. I'm sorry, I got a little bit confused, as I tend to do, and I tend to ramble. But my point was, the people that voted Donald Trump are much more likely to actually go and see the things that he has done that are good, because they're open to believing he's actually a good person that's trying to do good things for regular people, regardless of race or color or creed. Right? But it gets painted exactly the opposite way by the media. There, that's what I wanted to say. So the people that are in the media, they're rejecting it outright. They don't even hear it. They won't entertain it.
Let's be honest. And I think Trump has dug his own grave in a sense where there's no professionalism. I mean, let's admit it. When you compare, say, Obama to Trump. You've got apples to oranges here. You have one president who was the most eloquent speaker, and
yes,
you know what I mean?
Very well spoken.
And then you have Donald Trump.
Yes, I hear what you're saying.
F her in the pussy or whatever, and it's just, and you sit there and go, okay, where?
Come on! Don't tell me you never talked to your buddies like that about a girl before. Don't be holier than thou with me.
I'm also not president speaking in front of millions of people. That's the difference.
And he wasn't speaking in front of millions of people when he said that. Don't forget, he was talking to another guy.
But when I see the way he talks, and when I see the things that come out of his mouth, for me, and this is just the onset. This is just the shell. Oh, okay. There you go. I heard it's a good book, actually.
I think that people might think that if they didn't recognize the shallowness in all of the things that are written in this book. And you have to understand,
besides the
it's all well and good to say that you have this plan for hope and change, and to say all the things that people want to hear that make them feel comforted. Like when I first started talking about this, I was talking about the fact that people are led by their emotions much more today than they ever have been in their lives. And so, of course, they turn to a guy like Barack Obama that makes them feel comforted, and he says things the way they want to hear them, and he's calm, and everything is very cool, and he's even a little bit funny sometimes. But he's so shallow. The things that he said, the things that he did were often the opposite of what he said he was going to do. He didn't fix things when he said he was going to. He said he wanted to stop wars, and meanwhile he was engaged in all these drone bombings, and the money just kept going up and up to the Pentagon. And so when people are presented with this guy who's everything they want him to be, and they want to feel comfortable about just being, secure in the choice that they've made for a person, and he says everything they want to hear, but if you actually look at what he was up to, what he was actually engaging to, it was all the opposite. Like, it was none of the things that he promised to make better got better, and all the things that he said he was going to stop from being so bad got worse.
And
so it's all well and good to say that he's a good-looking guy that handles himself well, and he talks well, but people are interested in what he actually does, and that's, again, goes back to the middle class.
To my point before is, yeah, you see the shell, and I'm only comparing the shell. Whereas I say this is what I think if Donald Trump acted more like, as far as how he spoke and what and just his overall demeanor. I think, to me, who doesn't live there, I mean, I can only imagine if I was actually American living there. I think just even in the onset, and I'm only talking onset shell, where there's a certain, you're a president, there's a certain decorum, there's a certain, you know what I mean, presence that you need to present. And unfortunately, I think what pissed a lot of people off, and again, I have, American friends that are for and against them, it's just, they're embarrassed. And again, it's not because of necessarily even emotional. I get that. I mean, I can tell you right now, from what I understand, he has done some great things for America, no doubt. And I've heard this, and he created jobs and everything, which is great. And when I actually looked into,
that's actually the job. I mean, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but that's actually the job. You're the job of a big corporation, and your entire responsibility is, while you should make the people feel comfortable, your job is to make sure that business is running properly. That's the job. When
he first got in, he did that. He all of a sudden said, I'm creating jobs, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And at the same time, he likes to embellish, but at the same time, he ended up screwing a lot of people in the process. And what I mean by that, short term, what he did short term, great. Anybody would say, hey, yeah, he's creating jobs, this is good, he's getting manufacturing plants going, all this stuff. That's great on the short term. Now, long term, he screwed his own people. So, for instance, he ended up putting taxations going, well, America first, which, of course, he's a president. At the same time, he's pissed in everybody's pool. So now what he's done is short term, I'm creating jobs for all you people. This is great. Now, long term, fuck us, we're going to fuck you. We're going to put taxation, we're going to put tariffs.
Sorry, you kind of broke up on me a little bit there.
I was going to say, short term, he did what he said he was going to do, create jobs, which is great. The people love him.
Yeah.
But long term, he's pissed in everybody else's pool, and including his own people. And the reason why I say that is because when he said, well, you know what, American people first, taxation from Canada, tariffs, all this from China, Canada, everything, which is fine. You're taking care of your own country. But guess what? Long term, I read an article, and it was a while ago, but there are apparently were twice as many businesses that had to close long term because of what he's done. And I say that because he pissed everybody off and put tariffs on the rest of the world and the rest of his neighbors, so to speak, basically said, well, we're going to put tariffs on you.
Right.
So now there are certain businesses that relied actually on Canada for export and import, and they've had to close up shop. They've got out of business because Donald Trump basically he wanted to play tough guy, and everybody else played tough guy with him, and now all of a sudden this is the result. And
Okay, can I
to
push
me, there
back
was
on that a little
no.
bit?
To me, he came in guns a-blazing. He didn't come in, with really a sit-down to say, what can we do here to make this advantageous for everybody. He just came in saying, fuck you, Canada, fuck you, China, fuck you, the rest of the world. And he put his foot down, or he put his fist down.
Can I just point out the way that you describe what he did? It's like, fuck you this, fuck you that. It sounds very standoffish, and like he's not a person that could be reasoned with, or he wasn't actually trying to deal with people. He wasn't trying to come up with a win-win scenario. And I can understand that you may have read an article that made that exact point.
But that's his personality, though.
Excuse me.
I mean, even from
Personality. No. Well, again, media coverage really matters when people have to make an interpretation about the person that they're looking at. Because most people don't actually go to the source and listen to what the people are saying. They don't listen to the long-term arguments and reasons that people might actually be doing what they're doing. Instead, they go through an interpreter. They go to their media. They go to the news, and the news tells them what they should think. And they say, oh, you shouldn't like him because he's putting tariffs, and that's bad. But what you don't know is why those people think that way. What you don't understand is what it is that their actual goal is all about. What their schooling was about, what the think tank that they may be a part of is about, what they're trying to achieve. And in a lot of cases, what Donald Trump was trying to do was he was trying to take power away from these vested interests that were basically reaping the rewards of taking jobs from somewhere like the United States and shipping them to somewhere like China or Bangladesh, where they could basically make the same products and they could do it on the cheap, and they ended up making money. And so they want to have this free trade and open borders, and they want to have everything going back and forth, and they want to have the cheaper products. And it works for them on so many levels. And what Donald Trump was trying to do when he came into office, and I understand you say he came with a flat, like a bang, right? He was telling everybody, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. That's the impression that you get, because that's what all the articles that were written about him and what he was doing were written. That's the way that they were written. That's the message they were trying to convey. The question is, was it true?
Well, he did put tariffs. He put.
I know he did, but the question is, why did he put tariffs?
Well, because he wanted it's job creation. I mean, you put tariffs.
That might be your opinion, but if I can say that the reason, like, without talking about a specific instance or a specific arrangement, but let's say the dairy farmers in Canada. Okay. So as far as I understand, and this is a couple of years since I read anything about this, but the dairy farmers in Canada, from what I understand, there was a little bit of subsidizing going on from the Canadian government that was not exactly the same on the American side. So there was a disadvantage to American farmers over Canadian farmers. And so what he was trying to do was level the playing field, because everybody talks about how they want free trade all the time, but nobody talks about the fact that when we ship jobs over to China, the Chinese don't have to follow the same FDA regulations. They don't have to follow the same EPA regulations. They can pay their people slave wages and they can get away with it. And you can't get away with it here. So how is it fair that a giant company can move all of their operations over to China because it's cheaper for them to make their products, and they bring it back here, and sure, people get their products cheaper. I understand that. But the problem is that it's not a level playing field, because we want free trade. We don't want to put tariffs on things going back and forth across the ocean. Meanwhile, they're doing things a lot cheaper, and they have stripped a lot of products and a lot of manufacturing from the United States. And the fact that they were basically stealing a lot of intellectual property on top of that. Now, I know I'm talking different industries and whatever. I'm mashing things together. But the point is that in every single scenario where he was doing stuff like that, it had a purpose. And yet it was sold to people like it was just, he's a bully. He's just trying to...
And to your point, I think it depends on the sector. Again, you just touched upon the dairy farmers and whatnot. You're right. Depending on what sector you talk about, whether it's farming, whether it's industrial or steel or You know, he either made a lot of friends or made a lot of enemies, depending on the sector that he dealt with.
He made a lot of very
Oh
rich
yeah,
enemies, is what
yeah.
would happen. And very rich
Yeah.
enemies who basically their money was going towards funding the people that were writing nasty articles against him. And I cannot stress how much that is true. Because in almost every single scenario where they would say Donald Trump is doing this, you know what I would do? I would go read up on it. I would go, okay, well, what is the argument? What is the argument
Yeah.
from both sides? Is he actually trying to make things more fair, or is he just being like a big
Well, he's
bully and a
running it. I
jerk?
mean, he's running.
And it's easy to make somebody look like
He's
they're
running the
not
country like a
cooperating
business.
when they don't want what the high
Right.
money
But
interests want.
he's doing what Donald Trump has always done. He's running the country like a business. I do think there is some advantage to being a businessman in a sense, and at the same time, I feel there's different advantages especially around this time, and what's really concerned me is how he's handled the whole coronavirus situation. And for me, it rubs me the wrong way. Doing what he's done before, that's fine. But what really agitated me was the fact that he done literally nothing to take leadership or to really get a handle on this coronavirus. I mean, I'll tell you right now. I think as far as numbers and whatnot in the States, I still think they're in the first wave. They're not even past the first wave yet, and we're now over.
I'm not. Look, you're opening a whole other can of worms, and believe me, I want to talk about it.
I'm just saying.
But unless you got 3 or 4 hours.
I'm just saying, from my perspective, what really concerns me, and having nothing to do with the business sense, or what he's done as far as tariffs and whatever. Now we're talking about lives, and I think that, in a sense, I think he's showing his true colors on how he doesn't know how to handle the country, and I think.
So you think that he's putting money over lives? Is that your argument?
100%. The lack of.
What if I told you that shutting businesses and basically shuttering businesses and taking people's livelihood and their ability to be able to feed their own families away from them is actually going to cause way more harm in the overall than anything that he has done.
Doing anything to. I've never heard him, and maybe you have, and maybe you can educate me on this, but I've never heard him to say, listen, we have a plan here. This is what we want to do. This is what we're going to do.
Well, it's difficult to come up with a finite plan when they're constantly moving the goalposts.
You know what I mean? What's that?
It's difficult to come up with a finite plan when they're constantly moving the goalposts.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is that the president does not have authority over every single state as far as a collective state. Every state is allowed to do their own thing. He's not allowed to go into each state and say, no, every state in America has to do the same thing. Every state is allowed to play their own game, and he doesn't have control over that. And I think that's part of the problem. He can't. He, as a president, cannot go into each state. And again, correct me if I'm
wrong. You do realize that he, as a president, doesn't want full control over the states, right? He wants them to be able to make their own decisions. But what he wants is clear and concise information about the coronavirus, and he has gotten none of that from Fauci or Birx or any of that. He did bring in a guy, and what happened to that guy, Atlas? Atlas was absolutely attacked and castigated by the media because he said herd immunity. Okay? Now, again, I'm not going to get... I would love to have this conversation, but what I really wanted to talk about when I first started doing this stream was the way that people's emotions are being manipulated to push them in the direction that high-moneyed interests and very big, powerful, technocratic, corporatized people want them to think. And I'm talking about the World Economic Forum. They have a plan for the way things are going to go, and they're pushing us by using our emotions to make it happen. Now, that's something that you might not be familiar with because you have not examined it, because you believe that what people are doing is just for the best interest of the people, and they're only doing what they're doing and saying what they're saying because they actually care about the health of people. And I'm telling you I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that at all. I think that there's something much more, I wouldn't put it as sinister or nefarious in the way that it's being done, but it's certainly disingenuous, right? It's like we're not being told the truth about things. The way that they're rolling out this vaccine thing, and that's one thing that I definitely say, I do not understand the motivations of Donald Trump for doing what he did around the vaccination thing, Operation Warp Speed, and all the money that he threw at this stuff. But at every point, I waited for him to say whether or not these vaccines would be mandatory. And I've never heard him say that they would be mandatory. He said that the Army would help in the distribution of the vaccines for people that needed them, but at no point has he ever said that they'd be mandatory. That matters to me. I don't want somebody telling me how my health is to be maintained, because I go to the gym on a regular basis to maintain my health, and that's nobody's business. Nobody can tell me to do that. I do that as a choice because it's something that I have adopted in my own life, in my own lifestyle.
And to that point, even here, they're talking about, if you want to travel, you have to have the vaccination. I'm going, well, wait a minute. You know what? That's all fine, well and dandy, but you're basically forcing me to take a vaccination. People going, no, we're not forcing you. And I said, well, wait a minute. Yes, you are. If you want me to go back to my normal life, my normal life, and you're telling me my normal life will then have to involve being forced to take a vaccination if I want to leave the country. That, to me, that's forcing. That's how I look at it. And it could be wrong, and anybody out there could disagree with me, but I should be able to travel from country to country not having or not being forced to take a vaccination. I'm not saying I won't get it, but chances are down the road I'll get it when I know all the hiccups kind of are out of it, and when I've seen
Oh, that's making you sound very selfish right now. That's making you sound very selfish. That you don't want to be. Listen, you either trust the authorities and the medical authorities, or you're just a bad person that's trying to scare everyone.
That's right.
Else.
No, man.
That's
like I said. I know some people who have already received it, and luckily so far no knock on wood, no side effects or we're not going to know. Let's be honest, we're not going to know the actual long-term side effects until long term. So, I think there's a certain time where I know I'm probably going to wait until I say, okay, well, you know what? Like, it's been out for a while. Thankfully, I'm young enough where I'm chances are more healthier that I could fight it. The only reason why I would take it right away is because of my family.
You'd be obligated.
What's that?
You'd be obligated to do it for
absolutely,
work.
And obviously my family. I've got parents who are older now and whatnot. So if a choice right. where I knew that 100% I was going to protect them, then I would. That's not. But that's the thing. It's not. This virus has been pumped out fairly quickly. So, I'm just being a little cautious right now. And that's really, that's.
So let me just. We'll get off the virus thing, and I'm gonna let you go, and we'll wrap this up. And I appreciate you jumping in. That was fun. Thank you for doing that. I was just trying to have a conversation and talk about some things, and I'm always happy to have a conversation with somebody. And hey, let's do it on the air. That's fine.
For me, I just feel really bad actually for the States right now because and quick question for you. Do you think if Donald Trump hadn't said anything, do you think if he conceded like a normal president would and just said, you know what, yeah, I lost and that's the way it is and I don't think it's fair, but I lost and he didn't put up a fight
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit on me there.
If he
Do I think if he would have just conceded that it all would have been fine?
Yeah, and especially, and even now, do you think if he hadn't said, hey, I want everybody to want their voice heard and I want to hear it, and do you think we would have this riot right now? Do you think the Capitol would be experiencing this? I almost feel that.
No, obviously not. No, obviously not. I mean, if there was no Donald Trump, then there would be no movement following Donald Trump, and there would be no group of people out there that actually had someone that was expressing their voice and saying things for them on their behalf that they actually could identify with. No, I don't think that it would be. I think there would have been politics as usual, and that Donald Trump was an absolute he was not a politician. He did not fit into the mold. That seems perfectly normal. Like, everybody can agree with that, right? He did not fit into the traditional politician mold. And he spoke a kind of language that really identified with people. And the way that this has all gone down, the way that the election went down,
I mean, if nothing else,
he's entertaining. He's funny as hell. You can't take that away from him. He's funny as hell. If you can appreciate the fact that he is funny as hell. But to answer your question, I think that this is an absolutely extraordinary year, and I think that if it wasn't for the fact that all the extenuating circumstances happened the way that they did, that Donald Trump would definitely be the president again. And I think that they have done everything, the establishment has done everything in its power to keep him from being president again, including unleashing a highly questionable pandemic panic. Highly questionable. If you can show me evidence that this year is out of the ordinary for overall case mortality as compared to any other bad flu year, I will 100% concede that I was wrong. But you can't. You can't. You can't do it. And you can't say that the measures that have been adopted and deployed in order to combat the virus have actually been working, because they haven't. And I would direct you to a fellow named Ivor Cummins, 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 Ivor Cummins. Go look at his YouTube channel. This guy is like a corporate problem solver, and he has been on this thing for months, and he shows you with data and statistics and like right from the source. None of the stuff they've done has made any difference whatsoever, because you can't stop a virus the way that they are proposing that you can stop a virus. And so the question becomes, what are they trying to do? Well, Donald Trump was standing in the way of all the things that they wanted to do. Believe it or not, whether or not you know that, and people that have not kind of been listening to him and accepting that what he's saying has any kind of merit whatsoever, they would not know that.
I mean, it shows, because I mean, he held a rally at kind of been, you know, and it's like
we're getting bleeding coming through. Sorry.
I was saying it shows. You're right, because he held a rally at Mount Rushmore during a pandemic. So I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, so I mean, I don't agree there's a pandemic. I simply don't agree with the pandemic. I don't agree it meets the necessary definition.
I can tell you that other countries like even China, for instance, and especially Australia, they apparently kicked the virus to the curb, and it's almost non-existent there.
You know what season it is in Australia? You know what season it is in Australia?
It's always hot.
It's summer. Do you know what happens to a respiratory virus in the summer? It goes down. Because respiratory viruses have a lot to do with, you know, what is the key factor in this particular pandemic? What is the key factor for all people that have had poor outcomes?
For sure, we're in winter now, and that.
But why? It's related to temperature. But what is the key factor? What is the key? And I'll tell you, it's a vitamin. There is a vitamin that is highly corresponding with all of the negative outcomes from every single, whether it be obesity, whether it be old age, whether it be the color of your skin, socioeconomic status. It fits all of those things for why somebody might be deficient in this particular, and summertime, why somebody might be deficient in this particular vitamin. Do you know what it is? D. Vitamin D. And I posted something the other day, and I'll you know what, I'll send it to you when I get off this call, and you go watch it. Okay, it's from med something. I'll send it to you. You go watch it. This guy puts together study after study after study that shows you why vitamin D and having below optimal vitamin D levels is the highest risk factor for developing poor outcomes from COVID.
Actually, it's funny you did say vitamin D, because I got off the phone with my dad just talking the other day. He said, "Well, I'm older now. I should be taking vitamin D." It didn't hit me at the time, but yeah.
It's vitally important. I highly suggest that anybody that might be listening, please make sure that your vitamin D levels are optimal. That's the key factor in the thing. Yeah, supplement. Dude, we're Canadians. It's winter. Supplement your vitamin D. You should be taking 2 to 5,000 ICUs a day. Anyway, hey, listen, man. I appreciate the conversation.
I will go and get Amazon and get some vitamin D.
All right, brother.
Yeah,
Hey,
we'll talk to you.
much love.
Ciao.
Peace. Well, that was fun. I wasn't expecting you to do that. Does anybody else want to talk? Since I'm shooting the shit. Yeah, I came on here to talk about emotions, and how our emotions are being manipulated to basically get us to do things that some very rich and powerful people wanted us to do. And whether their reasons are benign or malignant, I guess you never know until you get there. But I think they're a combination of both. And I think that what's going on these days, what happened in the United States was just people trying to take back power that has been stripped from them. And it's obvious that it has. We've all been feeling a little bit disempowered these days, have we not? Even if you're one of the people that believes everything that we're being told by our public health officials is true, you must feel a little bit difficult, challenged by this year. And so it's a new year. Same old shit in DC, though. Anyway, yeah. I appreciate all your eyes. I hope that you guys have a good night, and can we pray for that? You're religious or not, I'm agnostic myself. I'm not religious, but if you could think just for a couple moments about that poor girl that lost her life today, that was a tragic thing. And I hope that we can learn something from it. But as far as I know, I have to go check into it, because as far as I know, other than that and a couple broken windows, they weren't destroying things. They were just making their presence known because they feel emotionally like their presence has not been known. And so you can't blame people for wanting to have their voice heard by a bunch of people who seem to not give a shit what people think. And I think that's what happened today. Anyway, take it easy, guys. Talk to you soon. Take care. Peace. Much love.